Lauren Sánchez has been called many things: a journalist, a social climber, a helicopter pilot, and now the wife of the richest man on the planet. But to understand how she arrived at the altar in Venice at the age of 55, holding hands with her two sons, you have to travel back more than 2 decades. Because this story is not about luck, it is about strategy, about how one woman with ambition, determination, and vision turned the challenges of motherhood scandal and failed relationships into stepping stones that ultimately built the path to Jeff Bezos in the year 2001. Lauren was 31 years old. She was young, ambitious, and still carving her place in Hollywood as a television personality at the time. Her life seemed like a dream. She was dating Tony Gonzalez, the legendary tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the most recognizable names in the NFL, a man with million-dollar contracts, fame, and a future that looked golden. And when she gave birth to their son Nico in February of that year, the picture seemed complete. The sports star, the rising television face, and the perfect baby boy. But reality rarely mirrors fantasy within a year. The relationship ended quietly. No scandals, no fights splashed across. Tabloids, no court battles, just silence. Tony later hinted that life and expectations often differ. When you grow up, you realize how difficult relationships truly are. Many women in Lauren's position might have been branded with stigma. As a single mother, as someone who had failed to hold on to her chance at a fairy tale, but Lauren refused to let the story end there. Instead, she carefully reshaped the narrative. She chose to frame the breakup not as failure, but as the beginning of a new kind of family, and this decision was not easy. She later admitted it took 5 years of struggle, compromise, and effort to build a functioning co-parenting relationship with Tony. 5 years of balancing schedules, managing egos, and learning how to turn conflict into cooperation. Yet those years became the foundation of the strategy she would use again and again throughout her life. The ability to turn what could be scandal into strength, to transform disadvantage into advantage. Nico grew up loved by both parents, raised in a blended family that refused to fracture. Lauren made sure of it. She welcomed Tony's new wife Toby into the fold. She worked tirelessly to maintain respect between all parties, and by doing so, she created something rare. A family unit that continued to thrive. Even after separation, holidays became joint celebrations, yacht trips became traditions, Thanksgiving dinners included everyone together. Lauren even invited Tony and Toby to her wedding to Jeff Bezos' years. Later, an image that spoke louder than words. It was a message to the world. This is not broken. This is bigger. Nico himself became the living proof of this strategy as a child. He saw no bitterness, no custody wars, no tabloid drama. Instead, he grew up with stability unusual but strong, a son who could proudly call himself the luckiest kid in the world because he got to spend holidays with both parents. Even though they never married, this stability gave him confidence. It gave him options, and when the time came, doors opened by 23, Nico had already made headlines not for scandal, but for success. He walked the runway for Dolce & Gabbana in Milan, watched from the front row by his mother and her billionaire husband, Jeff Bezos. And then he graduated from the University of Colorado Boulder with a degree in political science achievements that might have seemed out of reach for the child of a struggling journalist, but easily within reach for the son of a woman who had spent 2 decades weaving a web of connections, opportunities, and alliances. When Nico publicly congratulated Blue Origin on one of its launches with a message that showed support for his mother's new husband, the meaning was clear: this was no ordinary young man. He was no longer just the son of a journalist or an NFL player. He was now part of a much larger narrative, the Bezos circle of influence. And the question arises, was this luck or was this design? Because behind every milestone of Nico's life stands Lauren, quietly guiding, shaping, and directing. She made sure he had access to both parents without bitterness. She made sure his stepmother became a friend, not a rival. She ensured that Jeff Bezos did not just see a woman with a complicated past, but a woman who had already proven her ability to manage complexity and create harmony. To understand how powerful this is, you have to realize that many wealthy men fear complicated family situations, multiple fathers, different households, fractured loyalties, yet Lauren presented the opposite picture. She showed Jeff a son who was not divided, but united, who was able to glide between families without conflict. A son who could walk a runway in Milan, attend a top university, and still stay grounded in family values. This was not an accident. This was the result of 2 decades of deliberate, careful choices. As Nico blossomed into adulthood, Lauren also ensured that her role in his life remained central. She celebrated his milestones, publicly posting childhood photos, writing emotional captions, reminding the world that she had been there since the beginning, yet always careful never to overshadow him, never to make his story about her. Instead, she gave him independence while still tying his achievements to the wider narrative of the family she was building. Nico today stands as a case study in how Lauren turned the challenge of being a single mother into a weapon of strength. He is a model, a graduate, a young man tied not only to his father's NFL legacy, but also to his mother's new billionaire empire. His path was not accidental. It was paved with patience, diplomacy, and vision. And this is only the beginning, because while Nico represents the triumph of co-parenting, Lauren's other children tell different stories. Evan, the son she had with Hollywood power agent Patrick Whitesell, would grow up in privilege only to be thrust into scandal when his mother's affair with Jeff Bezos exploded across headlines, and Ella, the youngest, would quietly learn to craft her own identity, choosing silence, privacy, and independence over fame. But all 3 together reveal the same pattern: a mother who knew how to transform every situation into strategy. Ella was born in January 2008, the daughter of Lauren and Patrick Whitesell. She entered a family already overflowing with wealth, power, and access. But unlike her brothers Nico and Evan, she grew up under a shadow of silence from the very beginning. Lauren made a deliberate choice to keep Ella out of the public eye. There were no birthday posts, no staged paparazzi moments, no red carpet appearances. It was as if Lauren had carved a protective wall around her daughter, keeping her safe from the glare of Hollywood and the cruelty of headlines, while Nico could step into the spotlight of fashion shows, while Evan could be praised for flying planes. Ella was given something far more valuable: privacy in an age where children grow up under constant scrutiny. Lauren chose the opposite for her daughter. She gave her anonymity, and in that choice lies the deepest layer of her strategy. But anonymity does not mean insignificance. In fact, it makes Ella perhaps the most important piece of Lauren's legacy, for while the world can trace Nico's steps on the runway and Evan's flights in the sky, Ella's path is still unwritten, untouched by scandal, untouched by expectation. She represents pure potential and pure mystery. What we do know is that Ella grew up in the heart of privilege. Her father, Patrick Whitesell, one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, ensured she had access to the best schools, the best circles, the best of everything. Her mother, Lauren, fiercely guarded her childhood, keeping her away from the circus that followed the Bezos affair when Lauren's name became headline fuel. Ella was shielded when reporters dug for details. Ella was invisible when paparazzi hunted for pictures. Ella remained hidden. And that was no accident. It was Lauren's final act of protection. And yet, in Venice at the billion-dollar wedding, Ella stepped out of the shadows. For a brief moment, she appeared in family photographs. She stood beside her brothers. She walked with her mother and Jeff. And for those who looked closely, the symbolism was undeniable. Jeff Bezos was not just marrying Lauren, he was marrying into a family of 3 children. And Ella was part of that union. Her presence was Lauren's way of telling the world that her children were not accessories. They were central to her story, central to her power, central to her future. Some might ask why Lauren kept Ella hidden while letting Nico and Evan step forward. The answer lies in balance. Each child served a different role in her carefully constructed narrative. Nico was the bridge to her past, with Tony Gonzalez proof that co-parenting could be harmonious. Evan was the test of resilience, proof that scandal could be transformed into silence and stability. And Ella was the untouched canvas, proof that her legacy still held mystery, potential, and innocence. Ella also represents something far more personal for Lauren. She is the child who connects her forever to Patrick Whitesell, the marriage. That ended with scandal, but not with war. Patrick remains a powerful figure in Hollywood, and their shared daughter ensures that Lauren will always be tied to him in ways that business contracts and social ties alone could never achieve. Ella is the quiet link, the invisible bond that cements Lauren's place across multiple worlds. And so when we examine Lauren's strategy across her children, Ella completes the trinity: one son raised in harmony, one son raised in silence, one daughter raised in secrecy. Together, they reveal the full scope of Lauren's power and foresight. Ella may not appear in tabloids, but her future will matter because she carries both her father's Hollywood legacy and her mother's billionaire narrative. Whether she chooses to remain private or one day steps into the spotlight, her story will hold weight precisely because it has been kept hidden for so long. The public craves what it cannot see, and Lauren has ensured that Ella remains the greatest unseen card in her deck at the wedding in Venice. When Jeff Bezos kissed Lauren under the glow of Venetian lights, it was not just a celebration of love. It was a stage, a message to the world that Lauren was not alone. She came with 3 children, 3 legacies, 3 living symbols of her life choices, and Ella, though silent, though mysterious, was part of that grand display. And so the girl who rarely appears may one day emerge as the most powerful of them. All the daughter raised in silence could become the loudest proof of Lauren's ability to shape not only her destiny, but the destinies of those closest to her. Ella is the embodiment of Lauren's third strategy: secrecy. If Nico is harmony and Evan is protection, then Ella is the secret card, the hidden chapter, the story yet to be told. And in that silence, Lauren holds the greatest power of all. And so the story of Lauren Sánchez is not just about love or scandal, it is about strategy. Every child, every choice, every headline was part of a larger design. Nico, the symbol of harmony; Evan, the embodiment of protection; Ella, the mystery of secrecy. Together, they form the shield and the crown that allowed Lauren to walk into Venice not as a woman shamed by scandal, but as a bride crowned in power, beside the richest man in the world. And yet the question remains, what comes next? Because every secret eventually seeks the light. Every strategy faces its breaking point, and every perfect picture hides a crack waiting to be revealed. Will the world, one day, see the true cost of Lauren's game? Or will she remain the woman who turned scandal into empire? That is the question Hollywood is still waiting to answer. If Nico was the child who symbolized the triumph of co-parenting, then Evan was the child who tested Lauren's ability to shield, protect, and navigate scandal. Lauren married Patrick Whitesell in 2005, a man who was not only successful, but one of the most powerful publicists and agents in Hollywood. Patrick managed names like Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Hugh Jackman. He was the man behind million-dollar contracts, Academy Award campaigns, and box office empires together. Lauren and Patrick seemed unstoppable. They were the couple who had it all: fame, power, and access to Hollywood's inner circle. In June 2006, Lauren gave birth to their son Evan, a child who entered a world already glittering with privilege. His childhood was painted with luxury holidays spent at the finest resorts, family parties filled with actors, directors, and moguls whose faces were known around the world. Evan was raised not in the shadow of struggle, but under the glow of Hollywood glamour. For a time, it looked like his life was destined to be smooth, effortless, and without hardship. But then came 2019, the year everything changed. The National Enquirer revealed a story that shook the world: the affair between Jeff Bezos, the richest man alive, and Lauren Sánchez, the helicopter pilot turned journalist, turned Hollywood insider. Intimate text messages, private photos, whispers of betrayal suddenly splashed across every tabloid, every television screen, and every social media feed. And in the middle of it all was Evan, just 13 years old. Imagine being that age when your mother's private life becomes a global headline, when your friends at school whisper, when strangers online comment, when reporters hound your family. This could have been the moment that broke him. The scandal could have crushed not only his childhood, but his future. Yet once again, Lauren moved with precision and strategy. She did what any protective mother would do, but with the skill of someone who had already mastered the art of image. She shielded Evan from the media storm. She pulled him from her public social media whenever she shared family moments. His face was turned away, blurred, hidden from prying eyes. It was no accident. It was a deliberate strategy to protect her son while the world picked apart her choices. The divorce from Patrick Whitesell followed swiftly and silently, where many celebrity separations turn into brutal wars played out for the cameras. Lauren and Patrick managed theirs in just 6 months thanks to a prenuptial agreement signed back in 2005, joint custody was established, assets divided, and the marriage ended with no dirty laundry spilled in public, no accusations, no courtroom drama. The speed and smoothness of that separation was itself a sign of Lauren's foresight and Patrick's professionalism, but it also revealed something else: Lauren's ability to prevent chaos from consuming her children. Evan continued his education, quietly away from headlines. Now 18, he studies business at the University of Miami, a school known for its prestige and its $60,000 annual tuition. Alongside his studies, he has followed in his mother's footsteps with a growing passion for aviation. Lauren proudly posted a video of Evan completing his first solo flight, describing the indescribable feeling of watching her son take off alone in the sky. The symbolism here is powerful. Lauren met Jeff through aviation. Her work as a helicopter pilot brought her into the orbit of an aerospace tycoon, and now her son follows the same path. Was this coincidence or another layer of Lauren's influence? Perhaps without even realizing it, Evan was stepping into the very world that had reshaped his mother's life. What makes Evan's story even more remarkable is not just his achievements, but his absence from scandal. Lauren ensured that despite the media storm that surrounded her, his life would remain private. She drew a line between her choices and his future. She understood that while scandal sells headlines, it can destroy childhoods. And so she crafted a cocoon around him, one that shielded him from the worst of public judgment. But behind that shield lay another story: the psychological cost, the whispers at school, the digital age where nothing remains secret, the subtle shift of a child who once had a picture, perfect Hollywood family suddenly forced to accept a new reality: divorce, new step-siblings, a billionaire stepfather. It is here that Lauren's strategy reveals its brilliance. Instead of letting Evan dwell on what was lost, she redirected his focus to what could be gained: flight school top instructors, access to opportunities that few could dream of, while others whispered scandal. Evan was building skills that could shape his future. At her wedding in Venice, Lauren placed Evan at the center of her story. He walked his mother down the aisle alongside Nico, not as a child overshadowed by scandal, but as a young man honored, respected, and visibly part of a united family. The symbolism was unmistakable. Jeff Bezos was not just marrying Lauren, he was embracing her children, and Lauren ensured the world saw that image of unity today. Evan remains one of the most private figures in Lauren's family. No public accounts, no spotlight, no attempts at fame. Unlike his brother Nico, who has stepped into fashion and public life, Evan chooses silence and privacy. This choice may not be accidental. It may reflect a deeper awareness of how fame can wound, how exposure can scar, and how anonymity can sometimes be the greatest gift Lauren gave him. Evan embodies the second pillar of Lauren's strategy: protection. If Nico represents how she turns separation into harmony, Evan represents how she turns scandal into silence. Both equally important, both equally deliberate. Lauren understood that her children were not just individuals, but pieces of a larger narrative. Each one needed to be guided, managed, and protected in a different way. Evan needed distance, space, and privacy, and she gave it to him. And yet there is another layer to his story as he studies business and flies planes. His future aligns perfectly with the empire his mother has joined. Blue Origin, the space company that Jeff Bezos built, needs visionaries who understand both business and aviation. Evan fits that mold seamlessly. Whether by design or destiny, Lauren has positioned her son to step into a world where his skills could make him more than just a stepson. He could become an integral part of the Bezos legacy. So while the world debated Jeff and Lauren's text messages, while tabloids dissected the affair, Evan's story was being rewritten not as scandal, but as preparation, not as shame, but as opportunity. At the end of the day, Hollywood isn't just about glamour and red carpets. It's about power, secrets, and the scandals that often stay hidden until the truth forces its way into the spotlight. Whether it's courtroom drama, relationship, chaos, or behind-the-scenes deals, One thing is certain, the story never ends here, and as always, we'll be watching, digging, and uncovering the pieces others try to keep buried.